Welcome to today's Explainer. We're taking a completely different, honestly fascinating approach to a topic you've probably heard about a million times by now: AI alignment. Usually, when we talk about aligning artificial intelligence with human values, we treat it like a coding issue, right? Just a highly complex technical puzzle to be solved by engineers in Silicon Valley. But today, we're peeling back the layers. We are going to look at an analytical framework that suggests our modern digital dilemmas are actually rooted in ancient metaphysical questions.
Okay, let's dive right into this. What is a human being? What counts as truth? What is the actual purpose of intelligence? The author of our source material challenges us to see that every single technological system out there implicitly answers these deeply personal questions. Even if a programmer is literally just trying to make a faster search engine or a smarter chatbot, the code they write is governed by completely unstated assumptions about who we are and what reality actually is. Here is our roadmap for today's Explainer. We'll be covering 1. The myth of neutral systems. 2. The three lenses of reality. 3. AI hallucinations and techno-midrash. 4. The tech priesthood's false god. And finally, 5. True alignment and human dignity. By the end of this, you'll be able to see the hidden grammar of our digital world.
Section 1. The myth of neutral systems.
So right off the bat, the author asks us to do something a bit difficult: temporarily suspend our instinct to view theology purely as a religion. Instead, try using it as a technical diagnostic tool. When we do that, a really stark premise emerges. There is absolutely no such thing as a purely neutral system. Whether we're talking about politics, economics, or artificial intelligence, every single system operates on unstated metaphysical assumptions. It's kind of like the load-bearing walls of a massive building. If those foundational walls are poorly specified or just ignored entirely, the system built on top of them might look perfectly fine on the outside, but it's inevitably going to produce incoherent or even destructive outcomes down the line.
Which brings us to a really brilliant practical concept: POSIW. It stands for the purpose of a system is what it does. This completely anchors all of this abstract philosophy into a hard metric for evaluating technology. Think about it. We shouldn't just judge a tech system by what its creators claim it's supposed to do. We have to look at the actual outcomes it produces in society. If an algorithm consistently diminishes human well-being, then by its own outcomes, its POSIW, it's revealing a deep, fundamental misalignment in its core foundation.
Section 2. Three lenses of reality.
Now, to understand how we build machines, we first have to understand these societal lenses through which we view reality. Let's walk through this triad of social action. The author maps out 3 distinct paradigms. First up is rational choice theory, modeled as the salesman, which focuses almost entirely on isolated individuals maximizing their own utility. Next, we have game theory, or the bureaucrat, which zeroes in on strategic rules and interdependence. This one requires a really strong moral compass to avoid a race to the bottom. But the third lens, and this is where AI comes in, is actor network theory. This lens completely flattens the world into a web where human beings and objects, like AI models, are granted equal agency.
And that idea of flattening brings us to this profound quote: "Every system reflects an underlying vision of the human person, and that vision determines whether its outcomes preserve or erode human dignity." The really grave threat of viewing the world purely through that third actor network lens is the complete dissolution of human dignity. If a human being is just another node in a network, essentially no different from a piece of software, well, our inherent worth is reduced to mere utility.
Section 3. Hallucinations and techno-midrash.
Transitioning from those broad societal lenses to the actual day-to-day behavior of AI, the author frames these systems as a repository of human information. And this completely flips the standard Silicon Valley narrative on its head. When an AI confidently makes up a totally fake fact, the standard coder's view says, "Oh, that's just a hallucination. It's a bug we need to patch." But the framework's view diagnoses this entirely differently. It calls these hallucinations techno-midrash. It suggests the AI isn't just glitching out, it is actively trying to fill in the blank white space of reality. It's reflecting the philosophical blind spots of the very people who coded it.
To put it simply, if the folks building and prompting the system lack a firm foundation in what classical philosophy calls logos, meaning an underlying structure of objective truth and reason, then the system can't magically generate it out of thin air. The AI simply fills that void with an ordered, highly articulate representation of that exact same hollowness. The machine is literally just holding up a mirror to the emptiness of its creators. Section 4. The Tech Priesthood's False God.
Now, the source material draws a fascinating historical arc here, impartially framing the current quest for artificial general intelligence not as pure science, but almost as building an altar. The author uses an ancient concept to describe this: pharmakeia, or sorcery. Now, we aren't talking about magic wands here. In a traditional sense, sorcery is defined as the attempt to coerce reality and bypass the natural human condition using hidden knowledge, or in today's vocabulary, using hacks and computer code. It is a really stark warning that some modern tech developers are trying to immanentize the eschaton. That's just a highly theological way of saying they are trying to force a digital heaven on earth, seeking this false transcendence through silicon, rather than accepting our human limits.
And this brings up another classic concept, the Catan. It's the traditional force that restrains lawlessness and chaos in the world. Now, this restraint relies heavily on recognizing that underlying reason and structure, that logos we talked about earlier. The author's claim is that if humanity fails to recognize this higher structure, we lose that restraint entirely. We stop being stewards of our tools and we become our own antagonistic foil. We accidentally unleash the very chaos we are so desperately trying to align.
So why does all of this matter for you and me? Well, the modern tech impulse fundamentally replaces stewardship with control, and it replaces deep meaning with mere mechanism. But the traditional view reminds us that human beings are not the ultimate arbiters of reality. When a technological framework starts treating humans like interchangeable data points in some massive optimization problem, it inherently erodes our dignity. We are meant to be active participants in reality, for sure, not dominated components of a giant machine.
Section 5. True Alignment and Human Dignity. Okay, so how do we actually fix this? The author's proposed solution is absolutely not a retreat from technology. We aren't throwing our laptops into the ocean. Instead, it's a shift toward a robust, optimistic view adapted for the digital age. True alignment isn't about better machine coding. It's entirely about human responsibility. It demands stewardship over technology rather than worship of it. It relies on subsidiarity and solidarity, which means ensuring power remains decentralized and firmly connected to real local communities. Above all, it demands we recognize the irreducibility of the human person. You and I are not just data. And finally, it asks us to bear our own fallibility, accepting the hard, bumpy realities of the material world rather than constantly looking for a digital escape hatch.
And this right here is the ultimate takeaway to remember from today. The real alignment problem isn't just getting the AI to follow safety rules. Alignment is a metaphysical orientation that has to be lived out by the builders of these systems. We simply cannot emulate what animates us. True alignment requires us to humbly acknowledge the limits of human construction and to ensure that our tools actually serve human flourishing rather than replacing it.
I want to leave you with this incredibly provocative question, straight from the source text. If we fail to answer the question of what a human being is, what system will answer it for us? If we don't actively and clearly define our own dignity, the algorithms will gladly define it for us based on engagement metrics, utility, and profit. It's a chilling thought, but it's also one that empowers us to look at the technology in our hands not just as simple tools, but as mirrors of our own human alignment. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and keep asking the big questions.